just stock up. I just cut stock
Yeah.
up from my chant lists, which is tough. I'll
No,
I'll go on a tangent
don't
that
say that.
if I wasn't so worried about win cons, which is part of why I added Days Undoing because it shuffles back like your cards that could win. Um, that I had an idea to play like 4 consult, 2 stock up, and like a flashback in the chant deck, but like then my issue would be I don't know how I would win if my opponent played like 5 lightning bolts or something.
So, Jacob, how was your weekend? Did you play any Hobbit pre-releases?
Yeah, I played one Hobbit pre-release. My mom was happy enough to watch the baby, so Olivia and I
Nice.
went with a couple of our friends too. And I'm kind of happy with the experience overall because my friends really only play like they hardly play Magic. They've played maybe some Commander games with us, um, but I think they're pretty bright people. And what kind of ended up happening, and they've played some Magic before and they know the rules for the most part. They had asked some questions. Is in deck building, we all sat next to each other, and I kind of helped them build their decks, or mostly helped them build their decks, to be honest. But then, like, they just kind of won or got draws every round. Like, they had to read the cards and take a while, but it's kind of like made me happy to see that, like the hardest part of the pre-release, I'm sure, is kind of building your deck, but um, that they, can still just like
Yeah.
make good decisions in game and play the cards. But like, somebody who doesn't play Magic will have no card evaluation skills at all. So I don't really feel bad like helping them. It's pre-release. That's kind of the point.
Oh yeah, totally. I also went to play. I played on a Sunday, which was the store's very last pre-release. So like they do
Okay.
two on Friday, two on Saturday, maybe even three on Saturday. I don't know. And I did the Sunday morning one because that's what fit my schedule. And there was like 40 people there, so it was like kind of packed.
Mine
Not
was
the
like
biggest
88
store.
people.
Holy moly! Yeah, so it sounds like it was a really popular pre-release,
Yeah.
more so than
Ours always
the
cap at
and all
just
that.
3 rounds and do some packs per win, and if you 3-0, you get an extra pack.
Yeah, that's how we
Nothing
do it
fancy.
too.
Yeah, but so I saw on Twitter before I played that people were talking about how great Black Red was
Oh
in this
really?
format. Yeah, and then I looked at 4 sealed pools while I was there, basically, and myself and two of the others were Black Red. Um, Mine specifically was like very sleek, just really good removal, kind of have the sack theme, golem theme going on. Um, and I one of my games I had, or one of my cards was the Putrid Leech, basically, the 2 mana 2/2 wolf that you can pay 2 life to get +2/+2, and I had that on turn 2 a few games.
Great
I'm
card.
saying all this just to say that in 3 rounds, I think I was sitting at a table for less than 50 minutes. I just kind of
Wow.
ran over everybody at the release level. It was
Yeah.
kind of a not very fun for my opponents, probably learning or whatever, to have a deck like that that's just pretty fast and aggressive.
I've played pre-releases before, and I would say I played against tougher opponents than usual. I probably played against the top 10% of people there, and I did lose pretty handily to someone who had like some insane rares. I also built black red. My
Yeah.
deck just happened like I had three black rares and then the black red smog that's just kind of like a big 5/5 flyer.
Okay.
And my rares weren't crazy. I had two Renovian Rampager.
Yes,
Uh,
that was maybe my only
that's the
rare.
3 mana 3/2.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, I had two of those, and I had one of the Flash Wolf was like my foil pre-release pack card, and I just had a bunch of black red and rules. So I felt like I had above average deck. Um, but yeah, I lost to the Arkenstone in one game. Um,
Okay.
and then the other
That was when
the
I
other game he
raced.
beat me. Yeah, I tried racing that. I did not. It was not successful. And then I lost
Yeah.
to a card that felt even better than the Arkenstone, which was it's like Tom Bomb
The
and
trolls, the three
Bilbadell.
trolls.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that card was crazy. At one point, I had a 10/10 Goblin army, and he draws that and plays it, and I just like draw three land in a row, and every turn he blocks and sacks and draws four or
Okay.
whatever. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, yeah, all right, you got me.
A card that was super impressive for me. I mean, my deck was basically all creatures and removal, but except for 2 copies of Reverent Howl, which is a common in
Hmm.
the set. Um,
Yeah,
and it's funny because in Brussels, I was just having conversations with friends about how Take Up the Shield always like overperforms when you look at the data in sets. And whenever we play with Take Up the Shield, we feel like half the time you just like make some attack with a big guy and fire it off to gain a bunch of life at some point in the game. But it makes
Hmm.
sense because you're maybe engineering the game to be a race because you know at any point you could just cash this card in for a bunch of life and win the race. And
Yeah.
like, man, the Howl with like a mass goblins in particular was just like, it's nice that this card, is both like an instant speed sign and blood for 3 mana, which is just like a pretty decent card, but like it just has this buyout of also being like a great trick that, could win a combat and gain a bunch of life fairly easily. But also, yeah, I was just winning races by just randomly gaining 5+ life at some point in the game. Not
Yeah, I
even
haven't.
not just zero for winning myself, but just kind of hard for
Hmm.
my opponent to recover.
I didn't play with or against that card yet. I've wanted to do some drafts today, but I didn't get around to it. I'll probably do it after we log off, do some drafts online. But I remember thinking that card looked pretty good. I like that, a lot of time in limited, a draw two can be pretty powerful, but especially one that makes you lose 2 life is just like
Yeah.
situationally pretty bad to put in your deck. But having the extra mode is just really nice. So it's a cool
Yeah.
one.
It's just one of the best, like, you know, it's kind of the, joke of like bad players will say having life gain is broken, and then mid-level players will say life gain's overrated, and then really good players will say life gain is broken. And this card, it's
Yeah.
just like it's two great cards packed into one, which is a pretty great common. In general, I was looking at some sealed pools, and there's arena directs this weekend, and I think I'm probably my goal is maybe to play a lot more of these arena directs than I have previously because I actually really like small set sealed. I don't really intend on drafting the set much at all. Um,
Hmm.
and then my impression is that black is very good, and there's really only supported like black red and black green, and red just kind of will kind of roll with that a little better. But I think black green will be something you see often sealed as well. And I also think sometimes black is good enough that you might see, black white or black blue decks too when someone's black pool is pretty strong.
Yeah. I I really want to do some of the directs because I really want some Hobbit collector boxes. I don't know if
Yeah,
I'll
me
do the
too.
play booster ones.
Yeah, that's mostly what I mean.
I kind of skipped the last couple of sets, even the collector box ones. So I'm down to try this one. Yeah. So
I'm
we'll
surprised they're this weekend already, just the release weekend.
wait. Is it really this weekend? Oh
Yeah, I saw it today. It said 60 something hours
wow. I'm
before
not
it
super
starts.
prepared, but it's probably going to be running for several days. So hopefully I'll have some time. I
Yeah.
do work weekends. It's a little tough now, but that's how it is. Okay. So all that being said, a little bit of awkward because the Hobbit just came out. And we had these big bands. We didn't really expect the bands, so we scheduled this last week. We're gonna have our modern tier list episode, following coming hot off the Pro Tour. You played a lot of modern, so it's fresh on your mind. And there's a modern spotlight coming up, so that you might
Yep.
you're gonna are you definitely going to that at this point?
Yeah, I got my flight, got a hotel
Nice.
ready. Yeah, ready to go. Signed up for the event already. Haven't submitted a deck list yet. I expect I'm going to play the chant deck. I'm just going to keep working on it and trying to have the best version I can for the event. Which I think will play into kind of, we've talked about every time we do these that, this is a tier list among modern decks that are already 5-0 leagues and taking down challenges. They're obviously all good enough to be, your modern deck. But I like, ranking them, and I'm going to put some in F. And I actually don't even know what I would put in S right now. We'll see if something comes to mind as we go through this. Um, but I'm also not going to say that I think the Chant deck is the absolute best deck in Modern right away, even though it's the deck I've been playing and enjoying.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. Well, I'm looking forward to sharing your list, or at least your current list.
Yeah,
And we get to that. I'll make sure to read it out. But yeah, so just to go over the tiers really quick, I hate it when people have like S and SSS and SSSS tiers. I think it's really
yep,
silly. I hardly want to put S on it, but I get it. It's kind of fun. So I got super tier. It's the best one. We've got our A tier for amazing. Our B tier is balanced. Okay, so everything's fair is in B tier. D tier is depressing. So this is below average for the meta decks. And we got our F tier. So these are like the worst meta decks that either are poorly positioned or you should rethink your deck choice, perhaps. This is
yeah. Or
yours.
I just think
So,
mostly for me, I just think they have like fundamental issues, despite them maybe doing okay in Modern tournaments, if that makes sense.
yeah, and something maybe a lot needs to change for
or
them
I think
to be
another
good
deck
again.
is just better.
That's a good way to put it
Yeah.
too. Yeah. Okay. All right. So, what do you want to start with?
Oh, you have some that I didn't send you on here too. Okay. Um,
Okay.
like
Maybe
Belcher.
just a couple updated the last one. We don't have to cover ones you don't want to.
Okay. No worries. Well, do you want to start with Chance, and I'll just show the deck, my deck list. You can start
Okay.
there.
Sure. Yeah. So, Chant, let me read your list. So we did do a modern podcast episode where we did like an overview of modern. So if you're listening to this and you're new to modern, I think you can go back to that and listen to it. I know it might even be like a year old at this point, but honestly, modern doesn't change a ton, and a lot of these decks are still mostly the same. So you could probably learn a lot from from listening to that. Because right now we're not going to go over how every deck works or anything. We're just going to be talking and assuming people know what the decks are. So Jacob's current Jeskai chant list is 3 Solitude, 1 Teferi Hero Dominaria, 3 Wrath of the Skies, 4 Consult the Star Charts, 1 Day's Undoing, 1 Force of Negation, 2 Narset, Porter Veils, 4 Teferi Time Traveler, 2 Counterspell, 2 Isochron Scepter, 2 Prismatic Ending, 4 Galvanic Discharge, 1 Tune the Narrative, 1 Spell Snare, 4 Orm's Chant, and then for the mana base, we got 4 Arid Mesa, 4 Flooded Strand, a Hollowed Fountain, 2 Islands, 2 Meticulous Archives, 1 Mistrise Village, 1 Monumental Henge, 1 Otawara, 2 Plains, a Sacred Foundry, 2 Scalding Tarn, a Steam Vent, Thundering Falls, and then also Sink into Stupor and a Lorien Revealed as a land cycler. And then for the sideboard, we have Companion Kahira, Ashiok, Dreamrender, Silence, Supreme Verdict, Fire Magic, 4 Consigned to Memory, 2 Mystical Dispute, another Wrath of the Skies, 2 High Noon, and a Celestial Purge. So a bit different from your PT list. You've got the some changes.
Yeah. So the changes would be um, -1 Solitude, -1 Big Teferi, um, -1 Tune the Narrative, for Sink into Stupor, 2 Narsets, Days Undoing, Consult the Star Chart. So what else? Oh yeah, I had a stock up. Oh, and I had one Narset made. Okay, so
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, I want to try the Days Undoing Narset thing as a smaller package. I've seen some lists just have 3-1 right now too. Maybe a second Days Undoing in the board. It's kind of interesting because like I'm almost tempted to put the second Days Undoing in the board without a third Narset. Um, I just want to improve my Goryo's matchup. I said this before. I think this deck spread is pretty well positioned, and on the tier list, I'm going to give it like an A. Honestly, I think I'm worried about prowess the most, and that's one that I'm just going to deal with being a bad matchup. And then Boros Energy, I think I'm making a little worse by adding Narset to my deck, but maybe it's fine to add Days Undoing to your deck in that matchup. Um, and Goryo's, I thought my list at the PT was quite bad, and that's where I'm trying to get a major swing with these changes because I think Days Undoing and Narset are basically two of the best cards you can play. Um, I think kind of a deck list, you know, nuance is when you play with Narsets, they can't hit lands. When I play with Stock Up, they can hit land drops. So I've changed like the second Tune the Narrative to a Sink into Stupor to add land to my deck, and specifically one Narset could find, but also one that maybe doesn't feel like I'm flooding. I think using it to buy time is kind of on theme for this deck anyways. If I could, spend my turn 3 trading with my opponent's turn 3 and be down a card, that's not the end of the world with this type of deck with so many 2-for-1s. And I've also kind of lowered the curve with less Solitude and one less Teferi. As far as the sideboard, I cut the Rest in Peace, which I think Days Undoing is kind of just filling that role anyways. And then I was thinking of what I could add, and I want to try a Silence. Because you're already playing Chant as Silence in many matchups, so I have to assume a lot of the matchups you'd be kind of happy with Silence. You wouldn't put it under Scepter, I imagine. Though you could against Eldrazi but I think you're just kind of playing it as a one-mana Chant in matchups where that might be kind of good.
Hmm. Okay. Is that for like a mirror too? Maybe so you can break each other's locks,
Yeah, if it
scepter
was
locks.
like I think there's lots of matchups where Chant unkicked is just very good. I mean, usually matchups where you don't have to kick it, it's very good, to be honest. Eldrazi Tron, Amulet. Sometimes you need to kick it against Amulet, especially the player on Shifting Woodland. Um, Neoform is one where you don't really need to kick it, and it would be very good. Ruby Storm, similar story. Um, and yeah, maybe I'd board it in versus Prowess and just cast it on an early upkeep and be kind of happy about it. I mean, you're just like trying to buy time for land drops and casting consults.
Okay. All right. Makes sense.
Um, yeah, I would say, I kind of have this philosophy with modern that you have to believe your deck is doing something kind of broken. And I would say that, like, I now am kind of a believer that the card Orm's Chant is fairly broken. Um,
Yeah. It
you know,
specifically with Scepter, right?
yes, but also, and we'll get
As
into
in,
like
like,
recurring it is what's important eventually, but like it's also there's this sense that your deck has inevitability, and I think in modern a lot of decks don't care about inevitability at all, and they kind of just do their thing. There's some exceptions. Decks with Causelix commands certainly have this sense of inevitability as well. That's certainly a card that does it too. I think the cards Chant and Causelix commands could probably play pretty well together, honestly, which is
yeah.
a thing we might get into because that's a combination of cards that's kind of doing well on Magic Online right now. Um,
I was kind of thinking about this deck today because of the Storm Chaser talent ban, oddly enough. Because I was thinking about how Storm Chaser, one of the reasons Storm Chaser talent was so ridiculous was that it had a lot of inevitability over a lot of even kind of bigger decks with
yeah,
Boomerang Basics and that. And I was thinking about like control decks and like the kind of inevitability you need to be able to present and how you usually want to be with control deck. The biggest inevitability in the format, or at least control decks that do well, seem to be that, or have some sort of like tempo plan, which is possible. And this deck has no tempo plan. And I was thinking about how it has such a good lock with the Scepter and the Orms Chant, and then that um, because you have this, late game piece, it's like the Orms Chant aren't just a win condition; they're also something you can use throughout the games of Magic to just good effect.
yeah. No, I
So
mean it's just in Discord, CFT Saga was talking to them about their Bant Reclamation deck, and I think they put it a good way that Orm's Chant is a card of Black Lotus's type. Is kind of how to put it, where you're spending your mana or two and going down a card, ideally to get a lot of your opponent's mana and potentially a lot of life total as well. Um, and then
sure,
if you're putting cards in your deck that's trading for your going up on mana by such high degrees, that kind of combos really well with consult the star charts specifically. And then obviously Teferi Time Raveler makes the chant more of like a true lock, even if both with Scepter and without Scepter. Sometimes you just can stick Teferi on an empty board and start chanting your opponent, and doing it on turns. You're also kicking consult, and this deck can do kind of a multi-chant lock over multiple turns without necessarily finding Scepter right away, right? Um,
yeah,
and then on top of that, I think the other kind of really strong broken part of this deck is just that Wrath of the Skies is really well positioned, and I really think the red splash is worth it. I've not been that big of a fan of the card Wrath of the Skies in just like the only card in your deck that has energy on it, but I found this combination of Galvanic Discharge and Tune the Narrative to be just like really powerful.
yeah. Okay, so I guess anytime you kill anything that's less than 3 toughness, you're making Garathos guys better.
Oh well, I mean, it's also like I've versus Affinity, I've said end of turn, I'll discharge my own Teferi Time Raveler, get 3 energy, untap, and get your Kappa Cannoneer plus your whole board. Or at the Pro Tour, I killed Allosaurus Rider plus Atraxa.
Okay,
It's
so
same
it's like
kind
a
of,
little
it
it's
just,
a little dark ritual.
it's another Black Lotus. The deck is
Yeah.
actually a lot of Black Lotuses
Okay.
when you think
I
about
see.
it.
Yeah, well, Orm's Chant's interesting if you think of a card like maybe on one spectrum is like Ancestral Recall where it's like pure card advantage, and the other side of the spectrum would be a tempo card, like maybe pure tempo is like Time Walk.
Yeah.
And Orm's Chant obviously, it's not as good as Time Walk, but it's like,
It's
when
trying
you
to be
use
Time
it
Walk without
correctly.
but you don't draw a card. It's like Time Walk, your opponent draws one
Exactly.
card, is kind of what
Yeah,
it's trying to be.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. So it's like on the extreme end of the tempo spectrum, which can be really nice. I mean, it's really cheap. You got 2 for 1s in your deck. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So cool. All this to say is like I'm starting to put together why this deck is powerful. Even though to be perfectly honest with you, when I first used to look at Modern, used to look at this deck, I didn't really understand
When I lost to
how
this
good
deck
it
at Pro
was.
Tour Edge of Eternities, I thought it was horrible. It's
Yeah,
really funny to me because, I'm playing around with my win cons here and I'm trying Narset Days or whatever. Or, I like that Days I'm doing is good against Gorios to kind of recover like a loss of card advantage. And it's just like interesting that I really only picked up this deck after the most recent modern bans because if I had picked up this deck while Flage was legal, I would just play two or three Flage and that's how I would beat people. And it's kind of crazy to me that that's not how this deck was constructed at all while Flage was legal. It just seems like
okay.
so obvious to me that like that's exactly the card I'd wish I had in this deck. Talking about
Yeah,
inevitability.
even though it's maybe tough on the mana.
Well, I would go down to just like one basic island, not play counterspell probably, just play, different counterspells. I think it would be kind of fun.
Right. Okay. I do have memories of like watching a YouTube video of Nassif where he played in a challenge with like a blue white deck, literally splashing like
Discharge and
I think
Flage.
yeah, but he had like so little flage. I think it was like one or two or something.
Yeah. And
But
yeah, I mean, so I think my list is kind of converging with where the Magic Online lists are heading, but I'm not still not odds heavy as Narset and Days I'm doing. Um, I like that one thing I did to this deck that I think other people weren't doing whatsoever, and now it seems like everybody's doing is playing Mistrise Village.
okay,
So I'm
so
kind of proud of
what do you
that
need
one.
Misraid Village for?
Well, against any deck that's using counter spells against you, it's totally backbreaking to have Mistrise Village plus Teferi because you're just gonna like blank all the
Oh
counter
yeah,
spells in their hand. Um, it's also very
and
good against
Teferi's a
Affinity
broken card.
because you can get an uncounterable Wrath of the Skies off sometimes. You can use it and then just Galvanic Discharge their Kappa if you have enough energy and you don't have to pay the ward because it can't be countered. Um, and yeah, that's mostly it. Just, obviously decks with counter spells. And then, this deck already has the very powerful play of doing Chant Teferi, but I think the Mistrise mostly doesn't bite you when you do this red splash, anyways. Speaking of which, I saw a post. I don't even know the person's name, so I'm not going to call them out specifically. But somebody top eighted a challenge or something with a black splash for fatal push and sideboard pest control. Um, I already talked about how much I love Wrath of the Skies. I would not do that. I don't really understand why you'd want fatal push over discharge, anyways. If you're thinking about the card Psychic Frog, I'll just tell you that like when you discharge a Psychic Frog, your opponent has to consider that you could just untap and play another discharge with 3 energy. You could prismatic ending it. You could fairy bounce it. You could evoke solitude. You could wrath disguise it. Like I don't think it's worth it for them to start discarding cards to it. Now that being said, sometimes they're just Gorios and they discard Atraxa plus Faithful Mending or something for free, kind of. Um, but my point is, I'm not that scared of the card Psychic Frog so much that I feel like I have to play Fatal Push. And I think you'll find if you play this deck, your discharges are just going to kill frogs a lot of the time because your opponent's going to think about what's going to happen next and they'll just let it happen.
Yeah, but Misraid Village isn't going to become your new favorite card of all time, is it?
No.
Okay, that's good. When I had Jarvis on the podcast, I asked him what his favorite card of all time was, and he said Rashad Import. And then he asked what mine was. I said Kitchen Finks. He asked what yours was, and I said Boseiju, who shelters all,
Which is
which was
wrong.
not what you told me. Yeah, you told me the other Boseiju, but that's just the one I thought of. And
Okay.
he made this comment about like, oh, I don't know if we can be friends anymore. That's the bitch tree. And so I don't know what Mistrise Village is. Is it like Bitch Village? I don't know. That's like the name it used to have.
I mean, this deck
But
is very, I don't know.
it
The
doesn't come into play tapped, so it's a lot better than Boseiju.
Yeah,
Shelter.
sometimes it comes into play tap still, and you're really upset about it. But
Well, in
um,
theory.
I think a card this deck sometimes plays that I have not really tried is Hall of Storm Giants. I just don't find myself wanting a finisher in my lands, and I think that card's good against Planeswalkers, but I don't really care about
What if you're playing on
any of
Magic
the.
Online?
I personally, if I was playing this deck on Magic Online, I would not expect a timeout almost ever. Because
Okay.
I just believe that this deck is much harder to play against than it is for me to play. So I almost find the clock to be highly advantageous for me on online playing this deck.
Okay. You would just sit up on your chair and pay attention and play rather
Yeah,
than
and just
having to
make
worry
sure I
about
don't
that.
lose. Which is why I think Amulet players would say this deck's a nightmare matchup online, even though in paper I think it's mostly a draw.
Okay. Well, some players may, if they're new to this deck or played it slow or just play slowly on Magic Online for
Yeah.
whatever reason. I guess I could see the logic. Is what I was getting
Yeah,
at.
if I wanted another win con within my lands, I also think I would play something like Castle Ardenvale that like you can use on your opponent's end step to progress the game rather than something you have to tap out on your own turn for.
Sure, makes sense.
But that one's
Okay.
not fast, I guess. But yeah.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, if you make any more big changes before the event, let me know. I'll be curious. But yeah, I'll be paying attention to how you do at the spotlight. I don't know if we mentioned on air, but you are going to be playing in the modern spotlight coming up.
Yeah, in Dallas. Just kind of, it's not that expensive for me to go, and I'm gonna share a hotel room, and it should be fun. Just pretty fast
Neat.
trip.
Okay. We probably won't take as long on the other decks, so
Yeah.
no need to worry. What do you want to cover next? How about this new
Um,
deck, Devoted Druid?
yeah. This was a deck that for a day my whole team considered for the Pro Tour. Not very different from the stock online list. We maybe had some slight innovations. Um, this deck reminds me a lot of Ruby Storm, which is maybe not a compliment, but um, it's just pretty good at doing its thing. It's pretty consistent. It wins on turn two sometimes. It wins on turn three very often. I think this, it can maybe get slowed down by removal, but Tyvar is very good at piecing things back together. It's impossible to exile Devoted Druid from the battlefield because you can just always put two counters on it and put it in your graveyard. So that's very nice. Um,
And what's the combo piece? The Vizier of Remedies?
yeah, Vizier of Remedies.
What if
Um,
that one
eh,
gets exiled?
yeah, then you need, they play two or three copies. Um,
Okay.
I mean, what's made this deck, one card that's made this deck a lot better is, what is it called? Nature's Rhythm. Um, because now if you just have a turn two Devoted Druid and a turn three Nature's Rhythm, you win. If you have a land, because you'll just get
Oh, wow.
Vizier and then you can just harmonize it for your Duskwatch Recruiter and find your Ballista
Yeah.
with infinite mana. So that's like a pretty clean little kill. The turn two kills involve having Leyline of Abundance, which is both, a mana accelerant card, but also a combo piece, because if you have infinite mana, it'll just win. And what you can do when you have the Leyline Abundance is you could have a mana dork on one, but you could also just even like fetch a Dryad Arbor, and then on turn two, just like play Tyvar, play Devoted Druid, make four mana, and cast, Nature's Rhythm as an example. There's a lot more sequences that can get to that, but like that's just a pretty simple one.
I forgot about the existence of Leyline of Abundance, but isn't it funny that they made Leyline of Abundance, then they banned it, and then they made Badgermal Cub,
Yeah.
and they just banned it. It's like got the same thing going on. Well, if you thought Badgermal Cub was good and you got them banned out from under you in Standard, maybe build this modern deck. You can pair it with Leyline Abundance. You'll have a ton of mana.
But yeah, I think so. This deck has like I think versus Eldrazi it's a lot better than Ruby Storm is because it just like green just gives it stuff like Beseju or I mean these lists actually I'm looking at them, they're not the same as what they had at the PT. I think the card Gorilla should be in the 75 for Marvel Superheroes. That one was quite good for us. It's just kind of cost less mana than this Outland Liberator to use, and you don't really care about trying to kill like constructs with this deck. You're just trying to kill hate pieces. Um, and then yeah, you kind of have this toolbox of things like Drenth Magistrate, I guess, or Sun Cleanser you can find that just maybe your plan in other matchups is to sometimes have your own hate piece, which Ruby Storm basically never does. Um, I would say this deck is better than Ruby Storm. I would put it. I'm thinking between A and B. We can we can put it in A, but below Chant.
Okay. Okay, so you think it's pretty highly of it. That's neat. What's
Yeah,
this fiend artisan doing in these? I'm looking at lists. They've got
yeah. You can like do a thing where you tutor it and like untap it with Tyvar or something and get your whole combo. I think it's to be honest, my team was playing this a lot more than I was because they got to the testing house and I was in travel when all this was happening and people thought this deck was going to be good. Um, I was thinking through combo lines. I think that playing a what's it called, formidable speaker actually unlocks a lot of combo lines potentially. Um, Just some things
Sure.
to keep in mind. There's also you could build this deck a really weird way where you don't even need Ballista to win, and you could just. I mean, as is, you maybe could just win with Crater Hoof anyways because you can put like your Badgermal Cubs into play and untap them. But you also could like you could definitely do some weird endurance looping type of win con with this deck if you like. I think it would involve playing more cards than Ballista and Craterhoof or whatever, but like maybe you could argue that they're cards with multiple purposes instead
Okay.
of kind of just pure win con cards.
Yeah. Let's just kind of a good card, sort of.
I mean, I would say this is a conversation I've done often for brute scale players that it is good in one matchup, which is Boros Energy, and no other matchups.
Sure. Doesn't sound terrible there though.
Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
it's better than a 2-mana 2/1 Vizier of Remedies.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
Um,
All right. Amazing. A tier for Devoted Druid.
yeah, I'm trying to think. I might have more. I might not have much in B. By going through this tier list. This
Oh, that's okay. We'll just see. We'll
we're
just
gonna
see how it ends up.
have highs and lows. Okay,
Yeah, yeah. How about this deck since you touched on it?
brute
The
scale. You
brute
know what?
scale
That could
deck.
go in B.
Solid.
That's about how I think of it. It's just kind of average. I would
It
lean
was so
towards.
popular.
It was very popular, but even then, it kind of just did okay at the Pro Tour.
Yeah.
Um, I would lean towards maybe playing Sowing Myco Spawns and like 3 copies of Emrakul if I played this deck right now, and just really
Okay.
lean in. I don't mind that people went lower on Fleshraker. That makes sense to me.
Okay. Yeah, I know you like this deck, so
Yeah, I
I'll
have
be pretty
before.
fair here.
I think there's like 2 just straight up Emrakul ramp decks right now that I think I'm going to put higher than this.
Okay. So it's
There's a
kind
lot
of
of
a problem
there,
of
yeah. I mean, there's what 4 Cosmos Command decks to talk about here, and this might
holy
be
moly.
the worst position of them, but still I'm putting it at B.
Yeah. Do you think Cosmos Command ever catches a ban in Modern?
I think I think I would call it the best card in Modern right now.
So yeah,
So
it's definitely possible.
yeah, yeah, but they just are making that Texas promo for these RCs, so it would be a really hard time banning it.
Oh,
Um,
they love doing that. It's fine.
yeah, they did it with Monstrous Rage. I mean, if you
Yeah.
got to ban it, you got to ban it. I think Modern's pretty self-correcting. We have consigned to memory, thankfully, but people are figuring out how to play less and less colorless cards in their Cosmos Command deck. It seems like, which is a nice kind of way to make just putting a bunch of consigns in your deck worse. Which unfortunately, Brood Scale is not one of those decks.
Yeah. I mean, Consign only does so much.
Yeah.
So even though it is obviously good. Okay. So what? How about one of these other Eldrazi decks? Where do you want to put them?
I would put Eldrazi Tron kind of similar to Brood Scale. Um, it's kind of running the same problem where it's all consignable stuff. I think a lot of people at the PT did what I'm about to say, but my team was on the same page where we cut the um, Glaring Flesh Rakers, and you just play more like prison cards like Chalice of the Void or Trinisphere or more Dismembers, or I think Warping Whale is maybe kind of good right now. You know, can counter Neoform, which is a huge blowout. I'll say that I had a day where I was interested in playing Neoform, and I played against 2 different teammates on Eldrazi at 2 different times of day with our Eldrazi list that had like Disruptor Flute, Warping Whale, Chalice, Trinisphere, like way more hateful things. And the Neoform list I played was not particularly resilient to these things. And, you know, the Japanese players at the PT main deck Nature's Claim and had a Beseju, and I had none of this. Um, and I went like 0 and 18 in games that day as Neoform against Eldrazi, which I don't think it's actually that bad. But I do think if you like head your Eldrazi deck to be more of a prison style deck, you'll find that these combo matchups they're just not that prepared to deal with so many hateful permanents. And what ends up happening is like you play a hateful permanent, and the Neoform player is like, okay, but like I can use Veil of Summer or Consign the Memory to like get through that. But like they can't just like do that on the spot. So then you get another turn to like play another hateful permanent or a Thought Not Seer, and like you just keep adding to it, and then eventually you have your Tron mana, and it's you kind of just beat them.
Yeah. Do you like this list you sent me enough that I should read it out to people?
No, I don't. I think it's just you can look at all the PT lists; they're all so similar. Almost everyone Glaring Flesh Raker at the PT. I think that's mostly the point
Okay.
I'm trying to get across. And
Gotcha.
I just think you keep Warping Whale in mind. I don't think Amulet is as good as I thought. Amulet was really on my mind. I think that matchup is not good for Eldrazi Tron, but you could play Warping Whale as like one of the best cards you can fix because they have Scape Shift and Green Sun Zenith.
All right, cool. So V tier, relatively middle of the pack, better than Brood Scale by a bit.
Yeah.
Um, Eldrazi Ramp. Do you think this deck is any better or worse than that?
Yeah, so I'm going to talk about this new flavor. Um, it's hard to know because I've only seen it in action a little bit. There's some things I like about this deck, but some things I'm very concerned about. So I'm gonna call this deck the green white Eldrazi deck. And we'll see it won a challenge from Xena One not too long ago, last weekend. Um, and it's kind of using the fact that they printed. Oh no, this isn't even playing any of the green white. Oh yeah, Gathering Place, the green white colorless land. Has helped the mana base in this deck rather than play like Brushland or something. You don't have to take damage.
Oh, from Marvel. Okay, okay.
Yeah, and they have Talisman of Unity as well. Um, it's kind of the green Eldrazi ramp core that you know of, like Rumble, Talismans. Looks like no Ancient Stirrings makes sense. There's not a lot of colorless cards in here, actually. No Utopia Sprawl. What there is Emeritus of Abundance is a two of, and then like a mix of Wrathus guys and Orum's Chant. Um, Now, I'll say in Modern, whenever I don't play a deck, like it's often the case that it's better than it looks, and then I play it and I discover its flaws. This deck kind of seems like not the opposite, but more that it's like as good as it looks to me, where I recognize it's playing a lot of powerful cards. I'm like not a fan of Rathas guys whatsoever, but I do kind of understand Orum's Chant in this deck because, like I said, you just want the game to go long, and Emrakul and Cosmic Command, talk about inevitability. Um, but also, I just don't think the mana is going to be perfect on this deck too. Especially white white.
Yeah. It's funny, this has kind of happened a lot over the years in Magic where people discover like how good an individual card or synergy is between a couple of cards, and then they try it in some different shells, and it appears good at first, and then they realize that like this was cool, but it wasn't as good as the original thing. Or maybe it is, but it is an interesting phenomenon that happens a lot.
Yeah, I mean, so if I count the white, we've got like 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. It's pretty embarrassing. It gets fixed a little bit by Rumble. There's also a thing in this deck that I watched Young Dingo discover that I know about and has influenced my deck building and other decks before. This deck plays Devour of Destiny. I think it kind of has to for Ugin's Lab. There's just not going to be something better. But Devour of Destiny is not like it's not when you cast a spell, exile one of your opponent's permanents one or more colors, or you may exile target permanents one or more colors. It's a mandatory thing, and like you have just some random permanents with colors in Ice Till and Emeritus, and you just have to like exile these things. It's quite like a non-bow if you're playing like a colorless mirror, which is not an uncommon thing to be playing in Modern because some of the best decks are all colorless cards.
Interesting. It's kind of a
Um,
modern card. It's interesting that it's not templated different.
yeah, yeah. I'm surprised it just doesn't say opponent controls, but there's already a lot of words on the card. I assume is why it just is shorter this way. Um, yeah. So I think this deck is probably better than like a green red Eldrazi ramp deck. I could believe that, or the teamer ones I've liked to play in the past, but it doesn't look particularly impressive to me. And we'll get to the final Eldrazi deck that I'm going to put kind of at the top here. I'm going to put this in D, actually, this Eldrazi ramp
Okay,
deck. I just
worse
think
than Brood Scale.
everything I know about it is telling me that this mana base is going to bite you, and that Emeritus of Abundance is like, honestly, it's like doesn't seem that much better than just playing a Isochron Scepter or something. Like they're trying to do the lock with Worm's Chant, but I mean, I guess you don't have to fairy, so you're never gonna
Right.
fully get that off. I think Ice Tail is pretty powerful, but still has its flaws. There's just a lot of cards in this deck that I think aren't really doing it.
Yeah. Okay. I do like the Emeritus tech. It's pretty neat, just conceptually.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah. Gosh, I'm looking at this picture of this thought nuts here. I forgot how ugly this bastard is. I'm gonna try to stop looking at it. Okay.
All right.
So one more
Another,
Eldrazi deck then. What is
yeah.
this fella?
This is the Eldrazi Trudge deck that had a great performance in the Pro
Ah.
Tour. Now, the sample size, a little small, like 9 players, had like a 65% win rate. Um, Pretty amazing. And the sample size wasn't like tiny. It's not just like, the decks above it are tiny sample sizes, just one person and two people, having good records at the Pro Tour. Um, and this deck makes a lot of sense to me, and I've watched it, and it has a lot going on. I like what the Japanese players did with the list. I am not a fan of the card Devourer of Destiny, as I already kind of said. In these decks, that this deck has all the green permanents, and I just think the upside isn't quite there. I like that they added Drowner of Truth and Ulamogs instead. A nice little compromise of like lands and big hits. Also, watching this deck in action, it's a great Fanatic of Ronus deck, and that card makes a ton of mana. So hitting Ulamog mana is pretty realistic in this deck, I'd say. I want to put this deck in A tier. In fact, we can put it above Chant, I think.
Oh
Um,
wow.
I'll be
Okay.
curious. Like I said, I'm not sure I want to put anything in S. Um, Maybe one deck that I've put in before, but I'll say that, yeah, I don't know. It seems like a very impressive deck to me. I love like a lot of the stuff going on. I like that it has some pretty good plays that aren't consignable. I've watched people sack the trudge to Disciple of Freyalise, and that's really impressive too. Just drawing a bunch of cards and gaining 6 life. There's just a lot of like really good things going on in this deck. I think it's a lot of good cards. I like that it's fit in Green Sun Zenith with Dryad Arbor, but also you can get like Fanatic of Ronus, or get your Trudge. It seems like pretty well rounded. It has, I'm counting 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. It has like 24 lands, which is like a good number of lands, but like 6 of them are MDFCs, which is just like a broken thing to have. Just really impressive all around.
Yeah, it looks really nice. I mean, it looks really low in interaction. I assume it has some problem matchups against like some combo decks or
Yeah, it's pretty fast though. I think it's,
storm and
the fight
stuff.
rigging thing is really fast. It's kind of like playing Aetherix Marble or something. This deck
Right.
can Ulamog on turn 2 some games, if it, or Emrakul with turn 1 Trudge, turn 2 Ugin's Labyrinth fight rigging.
Okay. Sure. It's kind of nice.
Yeah,
Came out of left field. I like the Drowner of Truths.
me too. I know Spike
Little
hates
little
them, but I
little
like
dual
them.
land.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Cool. A tier. Nice. All right. So that's all the Kozilek's command decks finally, as far as I can tell.
yeah.
What
Um,
else do you want to tackle?
let's go to Boros. We'll get
All
old
right.
Boros.
I was just thinking that.
Nothing beats Boros, as they say.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to remember where you put it last time. I think you put it in the B tier.
Yeah. So once again, I really like the direction of the PT lists. I just wanted to say, I think they mostly cut like the main deck Legend of Roku nonsense. They just kind of honed in on being aggressive. I tried this deck like a month before the PT and really hated it. And I think I played a pretty grindy list, and I played against a lot of decks that were good at grinding. And this deck, I think, does not really grind that well. And instead, what I'd focus on is just being, kind of the burn deck of the format, being very fast and aggressive, hoping your opponent doesn't disrupt you that much. I like playing Lightning Bolt. And then if you want to beat, I would say notably Goryo's did really well against this deck at the PT, which is exactly what I'm talking about, like Solitude Ephemerate, Warp Quantum Riddler. That's the type of stuff I'm really scared of as this deck. Um, and I know from talking to Goryo's players, the best card Boros can play in that matchup is just Blood Moon. And I think maybe you go to 2 main deck Blood Moons right now or something like that. I saw at the PT people mostly played 0 or 1. Um, if you just want to win that type of game, I would just try to cheese them and just use Blood Moon and maintain kind of this aggressive, proactive deck instead of trying to like play into their game with the Legend of Roku.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess this is a really good Blood Moon deck, isn't it? What do you think about these Reckless Pyromancers that Martin Yuza played?
Yeah, the Pyro Surfer. I've
Power
not
Surfer.
really seen it in action. I'd be pretty scared to play a second copy. I'd probably try one if I was playing it right now. It's kind of a 3 drop. Um, I'll say two. So they banned Flage, which is why this deck's grindy matchups got a lot worse. And now it's kind of pigeonholed into just being like a an aggro deck, kind of like the old zoo decks. I don't want to call it domain zoo of the old days because it's not a domain deck, but it is kind of a zoo deck in that regard where you just like play the best creatures on curve that exists basically. Um, and it works out a lot of the time. And I think Galvanic Discharge and Lightning Bolt and Raven Charm are all pretty good, and the bombardment thing is also really good at ending the game. Um, and I like the Pyro Surfer, but what I'm trying to get to saying is I think a lot of matchups in Modern got better because of the Flage ban for it, and I think some got a lot worse. Basically, I think the grindy matchups got way worse with the Flage ban, but any matchup that's not grindy, I would argue, got slightly better.
Just because of the way you have to build your deck, pretty
Yeah,
much.
Ranger Captain Vios way better against Ruby Storm than Flage. Um,
Yeah.
Reckless Pyro Surfer way better against Amulet Titan than Flage. Just stuff like that.
Yeah.
Um, I think, I want to put this deck. Uh, I don't know. It's around the Devoted Druid deck to me on how good I think it is. I
Oh
think it might
wow.
be kind of
I,
good
I
because I just think the grindy decks I'm not gonna speak too highly of, with the exception of one. I'm guessing this week.
okay. It did really poorly at the Pro Tour, didn't it? Like one of the
Okay,
worst
we'll
decks.
put it at the bottom of B then.
All right.
I
I
didn't I
convince
didn't
you.
remember the stats.
All right. I mean, I, yeah. I don't. I don't. I haven't played a game Modern forever, but
Yeah, I would play Two
it
Blood
seems
then.
like
I
a good
think.
deck to me. It seems like a
Yeah.
really good deck to me. Just the amount I've played against the cards like Asa Pride, Ajani, Bombardment, they're just like ridiculously, efficient. Blood Moon
Yep.
strong. I get it. But I was also, a little surprised by how poorly it did at the PT. I'll say that.
All right. Gorios is what I want to talk about next.
All right.
This is a deck I'm
No,
maybe have in my back pocket for this Spotlight series. But I'll just,
seems like a great deck.
I'm talking about these decks, and I've kind of just decided that I want to play a deck that interacts a bit in Modern at this type of event, or maybe just in general. Because honestly, I was pretty impressed by playing it at the Pro Tour, and I think a skill that I have is I'm very aware of how good all the Modern decks are, and I play all of them in preparation for the events usually, at least a little bit. Because I mentioned earlier, I really think the perfect way to describe it is if I don't play a Modern deck and I see it doing well, that I call it like the grass is greener, where it just like I think it's really
Yeah.
strong, and then I actually play some matches with it, and I'm like, oh, it's okay. And like I think playing an interactive deck and knowing exactly how good your opponent's deck is and like what they can do and how scared you should be because maybe you've played their deck a lot and you're like if they turn to kill me here, so be it, is kind of how I feel sometimes, or stuff like that, and you tap out or something, knowing how the games could play out, knowing when you should be scared or not. Or I'd mentioned at the Pro Tour I beat Neoform where I like jammed Teferi Time Raveler because I just didn't think I could play that mini game against Mystical Dispute, and then they didn't have Mystical Dispute, and it's like, well, they have no incentive to have Mystical Dispute in their keeps because they're Neoform, and they have to look at other things in their keeps, even though they're boarding in four, just stuff like that.
Right.
Um,
Yeah. I That's something that like happens a lot in Magic where maybe you don't play against a ton, and the times you have played against you, it's done its really powerful thing more often than usual or whatever. And you can kind of get tricked into thinking it's a better deck because you don't not everyone can play 20 matches against their friend in every matchup or whatever. So you just kind of have to rely on the information you have. And I can imagine that happening even more in Modern because every deck probably has a huge power spike where
yeah.
it can kill you and there's just nothing you can do. So that all makes sense to me.
Anyways, I'm gonna put Goryo's at the top of balanced, and I kind of want to keep it the top of balanced as other things go in there because that's how I envision it. I think it's just like a pretty good deck for having pretty good game against almost everything in the field, and I think it's nice because you can leverage modern expertise or your deck expertise. I would. I don't have a lot of notes about how I would build this deck, but I really just would play 22 lands. Every time I played less than that, I get really sick of missing my land drop. Just put the fourth Marsh Flats in your deck. That's what the lands everybody cuts is. It's pretty nice. You have basic swamp, basic plains, and every fetchable card that card could ever want. So like that's a nice feature of it too. And
How
then
many how many surveil lands are you leaning towards?
It's just the three. Yeah, the
Okay.
stock mana base is just like three shocks, three surveils, breeding pool, three basics, 12 fetch
Okay.
lands, or 11 in some cases for the people that play -1. Um, I think, I like playing, all the ephemerates, solitudes, riddlers. I don't really like the Philology archaeologist version. I should mention that. I just want to play, my deck. I think this deck mulligans aggressively, and I think that's a huge strength of it. I think it's basically it and like Eldrazi are like the two decks that basically they could mulligan to five, sometimes four, and be somewhat unfazed by it in kind of two very different ways.
Hey, that's a pretty big
Yeah,
compliment.
yeah. The Quantum Riddler plus Frog things just really get you out of things. I find that like four Ephemerate has felt like a little bit too little as ways to like keep an Atroxa into play after Gorios or maybe even a Riddler. That I find myself main decking Consign to Memory, just one of, which is like a card that I expect to put four in my 75 either way, and Eldrazi is extremely popular. So that's really my only note is I would probably main deck Consign to Memory. I saw people like Edgar and Reed did that at the PT.
Hmm. Okay. All right. Right on. Um, might have to go through these other ones a
Yeah,
skosh bit
faster,
faster.
bit faster. That's all right. I think I got through all the ones I really wanted to talk about.
All the good ones. Put the rest in F tier. No, I'm just kidding.
Not quite.
All right. How about Zoo? I remember Zoo being in the F tier last time. What's happened with Zoo? It's changed a bit.
Okay, wait. Can we talk about Esper Blink first? This
Sure.
will be a nice sequence. Okay, Esper Blink, F tier. I think it's worse than Gorios. Just play
Oh,
Gorios. Esper
all
Blink is
right.
for people who play Esper Blink. Just hate Modern. They all hate Modern.
Or
They
they
don't
love
want to play
Felia,
Modern. They're
the
trying to play
little
a standard
doggy.
deck. Yep. All right. Next one, Domain Zoo. This is Esper Blink splashing for Territorial Kavu, also worse F tier because they've somehow warped their deck to be a
No.
Failure Riddler deck. And I know the
Yeah.
Domain
Well,
Zoo
they had to do
players are afraid in
something.
the
They
comments
lost.
of all the videos, and I know it had a good win rate at the PT. I don't care. If you look at that good win rate, it's four more wins than it had losses. That's nothing. It's not
All
a
right.
real
Here,
data sample.
folks.
Yeah. No,
Next
but
time
make
you
sure
go to
it's lower
Modern
than Esper Blink.
RCQ. Oh, okay.
Even though those players love
Next time.
Modern that play Domain. That's interesting.
Well, good on them. Although next time they go to a Modern RCQ, they should just throw their deck in the bin before they even walk in the store. Maybe take out their
Both
first
of you
player.
can
They'll
just
need
play
that.
Gorios. Yeah.
There you go. All right. Any more terrible decks we can knock out here? What
Ruby
about Frog?
Storm. We can put Ruby
Ruby
Storm
Storm.
bottom of D. Same issues as always. This PT,
Yeah.
four people on my team played it for a month. I said, like I respect this deck. I think it's pretty powerful, but then every pro tour, people just show up main decking or sideboarding Trinispheres, and it has a 40% win rate. And once again, we're at any pro tour, it happened again. It's
Yeah.
just
Well, I
it's
guess
really
people
not
think like you
resilient.
do. Yeah.
Yeah.
They like, oh, it got Hex Magic. It got a new card. We got to prepare. And then
Yeah, that was the
there.
other thing. It got a card that, like Hex Magic, clearly correct to play in this deck, made the deck better. Making the Ruby Storm deck better is a high cost because it might mean everybody's more prepared for you. And it has to be the worst deck in the format at, beating people that are prepared for you. It kind of just historically has been that way.
Yeah. All right. What
Okay,
about
I
your
see.
favorite
We're going to not
Black
talk about
Frog?
Belcher. Belcher's not even making the list. So,
What's wrong with Belcher? What happened? It
nobody
won the
plays it.
last Pro Tour.
No.
All right.
It's been a
Well, it
while.
won the second to last Pro Tour.
Yeah, it's really got nothing new. And I think we've talked about it before, but I just think it has a lot of problems.
All right. F tier.
Yeah. Um, what is this? The Demir mid-range deck you put on here for fun? F tier. Play Gorios.
Ah.
Worse than Esper
All right.
Blank.
All right.
All right. We're really ready for F tiers. I like this. Okay, Living End. I won't go too deep on this one. Living End is a deck that I think has a bunch of very good matchups and a bunch of very bad matchups. We can leave it here at the bottom of balanced. I think, it's a deck I really liked, and I found that what ended up happening is the simplest way to put it is if the card Living End is wrathing your opponent's board, and that matters a lot, it's probably a really good matchup. And if it hardly matters, it's probably a really bad matchup. That's roughly how I feel about it. So like
Is it
these,
the kind of deck that you can envision getting better if the metagame were to shift, or would it take quite a lot of shifting?
It would take quite a lot of shifting because I think it's bad versus every single deck with causeless command. Like
Okay.
quite bad.
Hey, maybe if they banned Kozilek's command,
But
we could revisit.
yeah, and then but maybe if this devoted druid deck is popular, but that might not even qualify as a deck that wrathing them is very good because they can kill you all in one turn, which is kind of the issue. Like you have subtlety and force negation, I get it, but like if you don't one shot your opponent and your answer to their thing was subtlety, then like you're just gonna have to deal with it again on the next turn and maybe die instantly. Which is why like the brood scale matchup is such a problem too. That's kind of just the theme of the brood scale matchup. And then like stuff like Malevolent Rumble, just milling combo pieces or creatures, also a huge issue. And I know
Right.
like you have endurance, you have all the pieces. You can answer anything that they present to you, but it's just asking a lot of your deck. That's a bunch of cyclers and pitch spells, and that's pretty much your whole deck.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let me pick one. What about?
Okay.
Don't break my heart with this one. This one's like my favorite deck in Modern. This is the red white land destruction. Ever since I saw it played at the PT, I'm in love with it now.
Top of D tier.
Okay. Acceptable.
Yeah.
Not too bad. Those are usually
I'll
the kind of
say,
decks I play, anyways.
yeah. If you haven't played with or against this deck, there's something I never really see come up in random matches I watch online. But in our Pro Tour testing, we know a secret about this deck, which is you're playing a deck with fetch lands and your opening hand is three fetch lands or whatever. Not, the most common thing, but like Ruby Storm or the Chant deck are two decks we played a lot of. You could just start the game playing three fetch lands and not fetch, and it's very effective against them because they're just going to be
That's
stuck
so
with a bunch of
smart.
red cards. And then if you play all of your cards, certainly with just one fetch land in your opening hand on the draw or whatever, really that's just a nice turn one play to keep them from just like developing a 2 mana red cycling card. And that might be stuck on their hands for many turns down the line if they can't just play it on turn two.
That
Um,
is a great example of a reason why a deck can be doing really well online, and then when it comes to the Pro Tour, like has a lot more trouble or looks much more mediocre. I think
yeah,
control decks, for different reasons, often have this same sort of problem where they seem really good against opponents with like, they're not sure who deck is, or they're not super versed against playing against control decks. But then when you play against an excellent player, you just kind of get, they have a lot more tricks up their sleeve to play against you.
yeah. And yeah, I think that like this deck's mana is also kind of bad. It's kind of counting on Field of Ruin and Demolition Field fixing its own mana. If I've built this deck before, I would play like six of that effect, not eight, as an example. Like I would just make my mana a little better. I have no idea why people are allergic to Elegant Parlor plus Arid Mesa in that deck, but I think they're kind of perfect for that deck, and I would play like two Elegant Parlor and four Arid Mesa as well.
Makes sense to me.
It's a deck that just doesn't do that much. It's less proactive than the Chant deck. Like it's less inevitable
Yeah,
than that deck is, and
but
yeah,
less of a lock. Yeah. One of the reasons I like it is how budget it is. I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of
right.
cool. It doesn't happen very often. All right, what about Titan?
Um, I got to put that also at top of D tier after what happened and my
Boy,
teammates. Sadly, yeah. I mean, it's kind of weird because we had this matchup spread matrix, and we thought this deck was pretty good against all of the top decks in Modern. And when you look at Carson's data, it was pretty good against all the top decks in Modern, and then it still did kind of well at the PT. So clearly, it's just like having this big issue with other right now.
right?
Um,
Yeah, I mean it's not surprising that decks they banned cards from just got knocked down a peg, right?
Yeah, and a lot of people who only play Amulet ever played this Pro Tour as not Amulet also. Which our team kind of
That's
knew
really
going in,
telling.
which was kind of scary, but our team still liked it. But maybe it's because we were too busy playing against only like the seven best decks in Modern and not playing the leagues.
Right, makes sense. This was a pretty big breakout deck at the tournament in Neoform.
Yeah, I got to put it at the top of the list, so we could call it S.
Oh my gosh, that's kind
Yeah.
of devastating, isn't it?
I've done it twice now.
For like the health of the format.
This was a deck I was seriously considering for the Pro Tour, and I think the Eldrazi Tron matchup from my perspective was really off-putting, but I didn't make this deck as much of a hero as I should have, I guess, because main deck Nature's Claim is fine, stuff like that. Instead, I played a list that if my opponent played Karn Grafdigger's Cage, I instantly lost, and that's just like something I could have fixed.
Yeah.
This deck, I'll say, you know, it's one of these combo decks that looks really all in, but I think what people don't consider is that it has four Consign to Memory, four Mystical Dispute, and four Nature's Claim, which is not a lot of interaction, and those aren't all in your deck at the same time. But it means you have matchups where if those cards are good, you're playing like this turn two, turn three combo deck that just happens to have like four hammers. It's just like a 1 mana instant in the matchups, and maybe eight sometimes too.
Yeah. Okay.
So compared to just like Ruby Storm or Devoted Druid that just do like nothing to defend themselves, this is like a turn three combo deck in my mind that actually has quite a lot of cards able to defend itself, which is just pretty appealing.
Yeah. Do you think this is like kind of a unhealthy deck, or am I just imagining that?
No, I wish they would ban Neoform.
Yeah. It's really icky.
I wish they would ban like the Cosmos Command thing doesn't even matter. Like that's not like the worst card ever to be the best card in Modern. It's kind of a cool late game
Yeah, I
card.
agree.
I think Neoform and Rao are like two very unfun cards,
Yeah, for sure.
and Scape Shift. Those would be like the three cards I'd want banned the most.
Yeah. I mean, at least Ral, like, is so easy to interact with, right?
Yeah, sort of. Sometimes it's hard to interact with on a combo turn. They could flip it.
Sure. Yeah. All right. Fair. Um, Affinity. This is a deck that's been pretty high on the list before.
Affinity, I want it in this B tier in the middle. We'll put it between Brute and Boros. At one point I think I called
What's
this
going on
S.
with Affinity? Yeah.
I think it's more resilient than I expected. I was really worried about it at the Pro Tour level. Um, but I think it's just a deck. It makes sense. It's a deck that why should it be a deck that stays on top of Modern? It
Right.
like that's how I
There's
view
so
it.
many good artifacts hate. Yeah.
Yeah, and also like Mystical Dispute got really popular, and your deck is actually kind of weak to Mystical Dispute to some extent. Not by
Yeah.
itself, but there's just a lot of Wrathless guys and Mystical Disputes floating around, I would say. And
Pretty much every color has something.
but
Every deck has
yeah,
something.
it's a good sign for the deck, honestly, though, that like I feel like it's a B tier deck when it's getting hated out instead of like an F tier deck.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
there was a time when it was up and coming that it was just very like seemed very clearly the deck you should be playing in Modern.
Yeah. All right. Last one. Is it prowess?
I'm gonna put it at the top of no, I'll put it at the bottom of B. Give it a little bit more
Okay.
credit.
Kind of a decent deck.
Yeah, that's the problem is it's good and bad weekends are kind of a decent deck. Like
Yeah.
I don't it doesn't have very big highs or very low lows. Like it's just there. You play your things, you kill somebody, and nobody's gonna care enough to like try to stop you. You know, it it's a very consistent deck. It when you draw the steel cutter card, you can beat the people that try to kill all your threats pretty easily. When you don't draw the steel cutter card, you can lose to the people killing all your stuff. And you lose die rolls and your opponent kills you before you win. And that's just all the features of the deck. I mean, it's probably one of the more die roll dependent decks in the format, to be honest. You probably have a lot of matchups that you're heavily favored when you win games 1 and 3 after winning the die roll, and you have a lot of matchups where you lose games 1 and 3 after losing the die roll.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. What about stock up?
Just stock up. I just cut stock
Yeah.
up from my chant lists, which is tough. I'll
No!
I'll go on a tangent
Don't
that
say that.
if I wasn't so worried about win cons, which is part of why I added Days Undoing because it shuffles back like your cards that could win. Um, that I had an idea to play like 4 consult, 2 stock up, and like a flashback in the chant deck, but like then my issue would be I don't know how I would win if my opponent played like 5 lightning bolts or something.
Finishing games. Yeah.
Or literally, like I might have all my Solitudes and Kira in my graveyard in this hypothetical
I
deck.
see. I see. Well, what'd you do with the Pro Tour? You had two fairies.
Yeah.
All right. F tier stock up.
Hmm.
I
We can put it in S tier for the thumbnail.
Yeah, that's
There
why
you
I
go.
have it. Is
Yeah.
when I do the thumbnail. Yeah, I put it in S tier.
I sent you a nice picture at the spotlight in Brussels. The
You did.
Fanfinity team. The Fanfinity team had a big food court sign, and it was just a picture of stock up. in the food
Yeah,
court, which
I
is
was trying to
nice
figure out what
because
they were eating in the thing, and I guess
yeah,
it's like ice cream. What are those? Like potatoes, maybe?
yeah,
Some
that's what it
kind
looks
of
like.
alien potatoes. So that
Yeah.
looks like meat, like ham or
There was good ice
yeah,
cream
he's
in the
got a
food
lot
court
going
there.
on.
The food court in that event, by the way, was just like actual food trucks.
Oh wow, nice.
So like, they might have jacked up
Don't
their prices a little bit knowing that it's a convention, but the food quality was good, I would say.
yeah, what are you gonna do? I'd
Yeah.
rather have kind of expensive good food than what's usually at
Which is kind of
conventions.
expensive, like
Bad food.
burnt hamburger, yeah.
Yeah, 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 exactly. Like frozen hamburger, then they put the whole hamburger in the oven, and then,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
cool. All right, well that'll do it. Take a look, guys. This is our take, mostly Jacob's take, to be honest, on modern tier list after the Pro Tour Marvel.
Get in the
So
comments, Domain Zoo players.
yeah,
I'll see
yeah.
you
Show
there.
us what's up. Make sure to double thumbs down the video too. Yeah. All right. Maybe just one thumbs down. I bet some interaction is better than nothing. It's probably better. The best thing to do is to thumbs up the video, but I bet it's better to thumbs down the video than to do nothing.
There you go.
So make sure to give us a thumbs down. If Zoo's your favorite deck. All right. Thanks for watching, folks. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time. So after the pre-release on Sunday, I learned about this new store. They were like, "We're gonna go." My friends were like, "We're gonna go to Jack's. Do you want to come?" And I'm like, "Great, let's go to Jack's." And Jack's is a bar in town, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm gonna get a whiskey soda. It's gonna be great." And then we get in the car, and they tell me they're like, "No, we're going to Jack's." I'm like, "Oh, Jack's. What's Jack's?" And they're like, "Jack's is like a card store." I'm like, "A card store? I never heard of it." So we're actually going to a card store, and I take my bag, and with me I brought my Dan Dan deck, which I now own. Pretty fun, by the way. So I'm like, okay, we're gonna play Dan Dan. And they're like, no, we're not playing Dan Dan. We're just digging. Which Jex in our town is like this store that's like a sports card store and a Pokemon store, but they also have like giant bins of unsorted Pokemon and Magic cards, and they have tables not for playing at, but just for what they call digging. And it's just people like digging through the cards and picking out cards and buying them for like, a slight bargain or whatever. It's like 25-cent ones, 50-cent ones, and then ones in top loaders. So that was surprising. And then I picked out some cards I wanted, and I picked them from the bin that I thought was going to be more like 25 cents, but I guess they were only 10 cents a piece. So I got some like really ugly old cards, or cards that I liked the art. Some cards that were nostalgic for me. I got
Okay.
Joyra's Time Bug.
Oh, I like that one. That's a
You
good
do?
one.
It's got good art.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it'll remove a time counter, right?
Yeah, I didn't even read it to be honest. But
Okay.
yeah, I just looked at the art. Another one I liked from Planner Cleansing because it was nostalgic for me. Where to go was Aeon Chronicler.
Oh, and Chronicle.
This is
Cool.
X or if three blue blue. Yeah, suspend. I remember I opened this from a fat pack, which was the first Magic product I ever bought, and so I loved it.
Did you ever suspend it on your
And I got some
end
old
step
cards. Like, how do you do that?
with the big
So
original
you're just
Teferi?
allowed to.
No, only with
Oh
original
no, I didn't
Teferi
know.
giving it flash. If suspend cards, they're all
I see.
sorceries, which is why you're keyed into
Right.
thinking that they can only be suspended at sorcery speeds. But if you give them flash, you can suspend them at instant speed.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's just
To this
rather
day, I
than
didn't know that. Yeah,
rather than cast it. Yeah,
I didn't have a big fairy. I've got this card Fear from 8th edition, which is
okay.
like
It's also an alpha.
the art is hilarious. It's just black, yeah, enchanted creature has fear. But it's funny because the art is like, I wonder if this is the alpha art. But it's like this little,
No, it's not.
little demon thing, and it's like shouting, and like these full-grown humans that are like 10 times the size of it are scared of it. So, yeah, got some good ones. Got Wall of Wood.
Yeah, okay. I see the one you're talking about.
Wall of Wood from who knows what set. So yeah,
Wall of
kinda
Wood
some
is that
bangers.
just a 1-3?
Yep. Yeah, it's a
Nice.
wall. And it's
Okay,
got
yeah,
good
of
art.
course.
I got one. I was looking at the original Merfolk looter. I got one of those. That art is kind of wild. They would never make art like this anymore.
It's the original Merfolk looter set, like Mirage,
Sure.
Exodus.
I don't
Okay.
even know what the set symbol is for the one I have. So yeah, I got some bangers. So now I've been planning my trip back to the dig den. I'm gonna go by myself,
Okay.
root around for a couple
Well,
of
that's a
hours.
successful
I'm
trip, I
hooked.
guess.
Yeah,
That sounds
yeah, I'm
like
hooked.
something I would probably have done a lot for a lot of my life, and now it just sounds
Yeah,
like something I'd never want to do again.
yeah. Well, other people were like picking out cards for their decks, and they're like, "Oh, does anyone need a flow state or whatever?" And I'm just like, "Oh, look at this old crappy
I like the way
card
you
from
did it.
Mirage.
Yeah.
Look at this art." Yeah.